I'm Dave Richard. I'm the creative director on Dead by Daylight.
So Dave, first of all, I always like to congratulate you and your team because I'm usually talking with Matt, but today's a treat because I'm talking to you, the creative director of the franchise. But just congratulations on everything you've done in this game. I don't really think, not only is the game asymmetrical and super unique, but a lot of game companies haven't figured out how to make a game as a service and have it keep it alive as long as you have. So just congratulations on all your hard work on your team, with your team.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, yeah, a lot is resting on a lot of very talented individuals as part of the team.
So last time I spoke to your team, you guys had released Hellraiser, but since then you've released an additional Survivor, new mechanics, as well as a completely new chapter with a new killer, new Survivor, and a new map. I mean, where do you guys make all this time?
Yeah, that's it's something we're struggling with, of course. Time. I wish I had way more to be able to create all the crazy ideas that we have. But we can only do the 4 chapters a year. But yeah, I mean, we still have a lot of awesome ideas we want to create, new chapters and characters we want to add up, in the following years. This one is one that we're particularly proud of, going back to more of our roots, I would say. This chapter was built to be more in line with our first original chapters that we've created. So, well, not chapters, but like the original game, basically. So the OG characters and team and fantasy that Dead by Daylight is.
Let's first talk about the new map you're introducing. What are some of the challenges when you do introduce a brand new map to Dead by Daylight? Because all the maps are procedurally generated. It's got to be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, there's the... So we like to say that we're gameplay driven. Of course, the primary component that we need to make sure is that a new map or new character or anything is fun gameplay wise, and that it works and it adds to the game. So the first challenge is by creating a new map is finding, with the components that we have and with the new components that we can add, how can we offer a new type of gameplay, a new type of strategies and way to play in the world with all the powers, perks, and mechanics that we already have in the game. And so that falls on the fantastic level design team, that prototypes a lot of different gameplay structures and map components, try different tiles to make sure that we have the best one to fit with the general themes and fantasy that we have for that map. Then the next set of challenge is, of course, exploring that new team. So what we call a team is an art style or a fantasy around a set of maps. So for example, Macmillan Estate is a team and there are several maps in there. Now this new one with the artist, it's the first map within the team. We might do others down the line. And so finding all the different assets that make sense with our gameplay mechanic and component, and finding that special flavor that's going to make it really interesting and different.
And then moving on to the next thing, you have a brand new Survivor. And I'm always interested in, and this goes for killers too, but we'll stick to Survivors for now, with the Survivor ecosystem. Because when you introduce a new Survivor, that's perks that eventually anyone can unlock and equip and work with other perks. What goes into that? Like, I mean, what does your whiteboard look like when you're looking at the ecosystem of perks and balancing for Survivors specifically?
I'll talk for the design team here. Of course, we've since the very early days of Dead by Daylight, the team grew and evolved, and now we have dedicated designers that live for perks, so they can have the mind space to keep all of these perks mechanic inside their head, to be able to, when they create a new perk, they can add something new or that adds to the set, and that can be mixed in an interesting way. Of course, it's an enormous challenge, and it's not just on the designer's shoulder to do so. So usually we have a committee that analyze multiple ideas. So, the end user will see 3 perks, but really there's, about 20 at the start, new ideas that are, there on paper that we test in our minds and see if it makes sense, if they're too powerful, too weak, if they're interesting, or if they're a good fit with the Survivor we're trying to build. And then we'll take just a specific amount of these to be able to test in the game, play test with users, with players, with specialists, and then we refine these ideas And this goes even in the PTB, right? So as soon as players get their hand on the perks and play with it, we can still refine these perks for release. And then afterwards, we still have the time to review them in live balance. Of course, they live, the ecosystem changes. And so a key to success here is to make sure that down the line, we'll be able to review all of these different mechanics based on the new stuff that's going to come in.
And then going to your new killer, you guys, obviously everyone loves licensed killers, they're big IP names, Hellraiser, Nemesis, like that's all great. But this is a completely original killer from your team. What does that open up for you as the creative director when you have an original killer as opposed to something that's licensed?
Right. So with a licensed character, it's interesting because you receive a box, full of things, but there's already things in there, and you need to do the best with these things to represent that character well, so that the fans will love it. And so the boundaries are already set, and so it's interesting to work with. When you start with a brand new chapter, well, this is where I feel my job is the most interesting, because we have a pre-production team with all the directors and talented creative team, and we'll set these boundaries for the production team. So it's really interesting to start from nothing and then have this set of constraints that will make the characters and the team really interesting. Because if we'd go and do whatever we want, then it would and make a product that is much weaker, that wouldn't have as much impact. So creating these boundaries is really, really interesting.
For the artist in particular, talk about her new mechanic and how you implemented that into the game.
The artist's gameplay and power was with us in a backlog of ideas that I think we had since the first year of Dead by Daylight. So we have a name for that bucket list, and it's called the Well of Horror. That's where we put all of the cool ideas that we don't have the time or the technology, or that is not a great fit at the moment, and we can review them later. And so that one was just one line. It's, we have crows in the game. It would be cool if somehow we could use these crows and have fun with a power. So really simple idea. And now we felt was the time to take that account. And the first idea was to have a projectile with the crows. And recently we've had a lot of projectile killer. We had Trickster, and we had Pinhead, of course, that had a kind of range component to his power. So we thought, the design team, brilliant guys, they thought that projectile, but also a trap aspect would be really, really interesting. And so with that idea, we go into prototype, we test a lot of different ideas. And just like I mentioned with the perks, we test with specialists and team members, and we polish, and we go through an extensive gate process until we have that power in that feels fun and that really fits the fantasy.
Speaking of the crows, I found it interesting. Was there ever a design point when you were figuring this killer out to utilize the crows in the map? Because she doesn't utilize any of the RNG crows on the map. She has her own specific power and her own theme.
Yes. So as part of the power originally, yes, it was a thought that she would collect crows, maybe to fill her tokens, so you need first to find these, just like the traps for the trapper. It was also thought that maybe the crows in the map would be something extra that gives a little bit more power. In the end, we've decided not to use the crows in the map because of the RNG and because some maps don't feature as much crows. And so that imbalance makes it especially difficult and can be frustrating for the players.
This is your first time adding Chilean survivor and killer to your game. And speaking to that as a whole, your game has one of the most diverse cast of rosters with as many people being represented as possible. Can you talk about that process? Because I feel that's important. Not many games do that, but yours does.
Yeah, absolutely. Since day zero, it was important for us that we have a set of characters that feel different than the tropes that we always see in horror genre games, movies, whatever the medium. And so right off the bat, we wanted to have a more diverse crowd and more realistic crowd that we can empathize with. And even for the killer, most of our characters can be normal people to whom extraordinary things, events, tragic events will happen. And that's what's, forge their character and make them unique. And so doing different culture, origins, background is something that we embrace. And we love the fact that, fans react to this in a very positive way. They feel represented and can have a character that they can really, feel represented and love. So that's really important to us.
Now, going back to your map, this is probably your second map that has a lot of brightness to it. Like it's pretty well lit. Like, what went into that decision to light it? Like, how do you decide how dark or how light a level is?
Yeah. So of course, different elements. Again, gameplay driven. So when the artists and the art action come up with an idea of the lighting, daytime, nighttime, weather features, we make sure that all of these components put together makes for an interesting hide and seek gameplay. And of course, for that map, for example, even though it's much lighter, there is fog present that can hide you, and there's a lot of structure that breaks line of sight. So this is how we counterbalance the fact that it's so light. Another aspect is that that we are monitoring, and we monitor during the production, is the ground, because it's sand and it's so light. Would scratch marks and blood be too apparent or not enough? So these are all things that we monitor, and we need some time to add more texture to the ground, or change the lighting a bit in some corners, or with some assets where the survivors can be tactical about it and use the environment to hide, for example.
When you guys decide when's the right time to build like a new power, like completely from the ground up, or to modify existing abilities in the game? Like, can you talk about that balance? Because it's got to be a work hours balance, right? Time, money, and energy.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a specialist team now, so that of course will not be possible without very specialized team members. So for example, design wise, we have a team that's all about creating new content, and these designers are aware of what exists in the game, what was done before, and where we can have new powers designed and new perks, right? But then you have also a live design team, and these members' mind space is all about what is existing right now, what's the community feedback about these things, are what's the meta build, how are these perk and power used, and they can analyze the data, the feedback, and then assess just what is live and how we can change it and make it better. These teams talk, they share information, and then it's the team direction that decide where we should go and where we should put our effort.
And then, just because I always have to ask this question every time, if you can't answer it, I understand, but can you give us any update on cross progression? Because as an Xbox player, I primarily play on Xbox, but my friends play on PC. I come to the PC, I don't have any of my perks, I don't have my survivors unlocked. Like, any update on that you can give us at all?
I cannot.
It's okay, at least I asked.
Yeah.